and welcome to tonight's journey. I'm so glad you're here. Before we begin, I want you to get comfortable. Adjust your pillows, settle into your blankets, and let your body sink deeply into whatever surface is supporting you right now. Take a slow breath in through your nose and release it gently through your mouth. Good. Tonight, we're going to explore one of the most secretive places on Earth, but we're going to do it in a way that lets your mind wander and drift. We'll walk through the history, the landscape, and the stories of Area 51, not with urgency or excitement, but with the gentle, measured pace of someone describing a distant memory on a quiet evening. There's no need to remember every detail. There's no test at the end. Just let the words wash over you like waves on a shore. And if you drift away before we finish, that's exactly what should happen. Let's begin our journey into the Nevada desert, where secrets sleep beneath endless stars. The desert's embrace. The Nevada desert stretches in every direction like an ocean frozen in time. This is the high desert, where the air is thin and clear, where the sky seems impossibly vast, and where silence has a weight and texture you can almost touch. We're standing now, in your mind's eye, at the edge of a dry lake bed called Groom Lake, surrounded by mountain ranges that turn purple and gold as the sun makes its slow arc across the heavens. The Emigrant Valley spreads before us, a canvas painted in shades of tan, rust, and sage green. The temperature swings wildly here, from scorching afternoons that make the horizon shimmer and dance, to nights so cold and clear that every star in the galaxy seems to lean down close enough to touch. This is not the Nevada of neon lights and slot machines. This is the Nevada that existed long before humans arrived and will exist long after we're gone. The land here is ancient, patient, and utterly indifferent to the dramas we've imposed upon it. Creosote bushes dot the landscape, their waxy leaves designed to hold every precious drop of moisture. Joshua trees raise their twisted arms toward the sky like prophets frozen mid-sermon. The soil is alkaline, pale, almost white in places where the old lake left its mineral deposits behind. When you walk across this ground, your footsteps leave sharp impressions that might last for years, until wind or the rare rain erases them. The mountains that ring this valley have names both poetic and practical. The Paranagat Range, the Timpahoot Range, the Groom Range itself, which rises like a natural fortress wall to the northeast. These mountains are old, worn smooth by millennia of wind and weather. They're not the young, jagged peaks you might find in the Rockies or the Sierra Nevada. These are elder mountains, their sharp edges softened, their slopes covered in a sparse stubble of desert vegetation that clings to life with admirable stubbornness. Groom Lake itself is not really a lake at all, not anymore. It's a dry lake bed, a playa stretching nearly 6 miles long and perfectly flat, as level as a table set by nature herself. Thousands of years ago, during the last ice age, this was indeed a lake, fed by runoff from the surrounding mountains when the climate was wetter and cooler than it is now. But as the centuries passed and the world warmed, the water evaporated, leaving behind this vast, empty space. The surface is hard-packed clay and silt, smooth as concrete in most places, ideal for something that needs a long, flat surface. Ideal, say, for testing aircraft that need room to take off and land, far from curious eyes. Standing here, you can understand why someone looking for isolation would choose this place. In every direction, there's nothing but miles and miles of emptiness. The nearest town, Rachel, Nevada, is over 20 miles away and has a population that you could count on your fingers and toes. Las Vegas, the closest major city, lies over 80 miles to the southwest, far enough that its glow barely registers on the night horizon. To the north, south, and east, there's even less. Just desert, mountains, and more desert, stretching on toward other lonely Nevada towns with names like Alamo and Hico. The sky here does something you can't see in most places anymore. At night, when the sun finally surrenders to the horizon and the temperature begins its steady drop, the darkness that settles over the desert is profound and complete. There are no streetlights, no passing cars, no illuminated billboards or strip malls. The darkness is so total that your eyes need 20 minutes or more to fully adjust, and when they do, the reward is spectacular. The Milky Way appears not as a faint smudge, but as a river of light flowing across the dome of the sky. You can see satellites tracking their patient orbits. You can spot meteors streaking through the atmosphere. On certain nights, if you're lucky, you might see the faint green glow of aurora reaching down from the north. This is the stage upon which our story unfolds. This landscape of extremes, of beauty and harshness intermingled, of silence so deep you can hear your own heartbeat, of vistas so vast they make you feel both insignificant and somehow connected to something larger than yourself. The desert has been here for millions of years. It will be here for millions more. And for a brief moment in its long existence, humans came to this place and decided to keep secrets. Here, the wind, when it blows, moves across this landscape with nothing to stop it or slow it down. It picks up the fine dust from the lake bed and carries it in pale curtains that drift like ghosts across the valley floor. Sometimes these dust devils form, spinning columns of air and particles that dance and sway before dissipating as suddenly as they appeared. In the spring, if the winter has been kind enough to bring rain, tiny flowers emerge from the seemingly lifeless soil. Desert marigolds, bright yellow against the pale ground. Purple lupines that cluster in patches where the moisture has collected. These blooms last only a few weeks before the heat returns, and the land remembers its harshness again. The animals that live here are survivors, adapted to extremes. Kit foxes hunt at night when the temperature is tolerable, their enormous ears radiating heat away from their bodies. Jackrabbits, with legs built for speed, can cover ground in great bounding leaps when a predator appears. Rattlesnakes coil in the shade of rocks during the day, emerging at dusk to hunt rodents that themselves have spent the day underground. Ravens, those intelligent blackbirds that seem to thrive everywhere, even here, soar on thermals and investigate anything that looks interesting or edible. Hawks circle high above, their keen eyes scanning for movement far below. This land has witnessed much. It was here long before the Paiute and Shoshone peoples traveled through these valleys, following seasonal patterns and taking only what they needed. It was here when Spanish explorers passed through, seeking routes to California. It was here when Mormon settlers tried, and mostly failed, to establish communities in this unforgiving environment. It was here when prospectors came looking for gold and silver during Nevada's mining booms, occasionally finding enough to justify a short-lived camp before moving on. The desert absorbed all of these human stories, remained unchanged in its essential nature, and waited. In the 1950s, someone looked at this empty space on a map and saw not desolation, but opportunity. They saw isolation that could be turned into privacy. They saw distance that could be turned into security. They saw a blank canvas upon which they could write secrets that needed protection. And so this ancient desert, which had existed for eons caring nothing for human concerns, suddenly found itself at the center of some of the most classified operations in American history. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let your breathing stay slow and steady. Feel the weight of your body pressing into your bed. Imagine standing in this desert as the last light fades from the western sky, the mountains turning from gold to purple to black, the first stars appearing like pinpricks in a velvet curtain. The air grows cool against your skin. The silence is so complete that you can hear the blood moving through your veins, and somewhere, far in the distance, barely visible in the gathering darkness, there are lights, artificial lights, lights that suggest humans and buildings and activity in this place that seems too remote and harsh for sustained human presence. Origins, birth of a secret. Let's drift back now to the early 1950s. The world is still recovering from the Second World War, but a new conflict has emerged. One fought with intelligence, technology, and positioning rather than massed armies. The Cold War has begun, and the United States and the Soviet Union circle each other like wary predators, each trying to understand what the other is capable of, what weapons they're developing, what plans they're making. Information is power, and both sides are desperate for information about the other. The Soviet Union is vast and secretive. Its borders are closed to American observers. Its military facilities are hidden deep within its enormous territory. Traditional reconnaissance methods are limited. You can't simply send people in to look around. You can't trust the information that does leak out. What the United States needs is a way to see inside the Soviet Union from above, from so high that Soviet aircraft and missiles can't reach whatever is doing the looking. What they need is a spy plane unlike anything that has ever been built before. In 1954, the Central Intelligence Agency approaches a brilliant aircraft designer named Kelly Johnson, who works for Lockheed Aircraft Corporation in Burbank, California. Johnson runs a special division that operates independently from the rest of the company, a division that would eventually become famous as the Skunk Works. The name comes from a comic strip popular at the time, and it refers to a place where unconventional ideas are welcome, where small teams work in secrecy on difficult problems, where bureaucracy is minimized and innovation is encouraged. The CIA has a challenging request. They want an aircraft that can fly higher than any existing plane, at altitudes where the air is so thin the conventional aircraft can barely function. They want it to carry cameras capable of photographing objects on the ground from more than 70,000 feet in the air. They want it to have enormous range so it can fly deep into Soviet territory and return safely. And they want it quickly, because the need for intelligence is urgent and growing more urgent by the day. Kelly Johnson is not a man who backs away from difficult challenges. He's already designed a P-38 Lightning fighter from World War II, the F-104 Starfighter, and other innovative aircraft. He understands that what the CIA is asking for will require rethinking basic assumptions about aircraft design. To fly at extreme altitudes, the plane will need to be incredibly light, which means stripping away everything that isn't absolutely essential. It will need wings that are extraordinarily long and slender to generate lift in the thin air. It will need an engine that can operate in conditions where there's barely enough oxygen to sustain combustion. Johnson gathers a small team of engineers and designers. They work in a rented facility adjacent to Lockheed's main plant, behind a security fence, in conditions that are cramped and far from glamorous. The project has a code name: Aquatone. The aircraft they're designing will eventually be called the U-2, though at the beginning it's referred to simply as Article 341, a deliberately boring designation meant to deflect curiosity. But where do you test such an aircraft? You can't do it at established Air Force bases where hundreds of people might see it and ask questions. You can't do it near populated areas where civilians might photograph it or talk about it. You need somewhere remote, somewhere secure, somewhere that already has infrastructure, but isn't regularly used for operations that attract attention. You need, in short, exactly the kind of place that barely exists. Kelly Johnson himself goes looking. He flies over potential sites in Nevada, studying the terrain, considering the logistics. He needs a place with good flying weather, with minimal air traffic, with a long runway or a surface suitable for constructing one. He considers several locations, and then he sees Groom Lake. The dry lake bed stretches out below, vast and flat and empty. The surrounding mountains provide a natural security barrier. The nearest settlement is far enough away that casual observation would be nearly impossible. It's perfect. But Groom Lake is not exactly virgin territory. During World War II, the military used this area for various purposes, including small-scale gunnery training. There are a few abandoned buildings left over from those days. The land is controlled by the Atomic Energy Commission as part of the Nevada test site, where nuclear weapons are tested in other valleys not far from here. This means there's already security in place, already a culture of secrecy, already restrictions on who can go where. In 1955, the CIA and the Air Force reach an agreement. They'll develop Groom Lake into a testing facility for the U-2 and future reconnaissance aircraft. The site is given various names and designations over the years, but the one that eventually sticks comes from the Atomic Energy Commission's land designation system. The Nevada test site is divided into numbered areas, and Groom Lake falls within Area 51. It's a bureaucratic designation, nothing more, but it will become one of the most famous place names in the world. The work begins quickly. Construction crews arrive by air, landing on the lake bed itself in transport planes. They bring equipment, materials, supplies. They build a runway on the southwest corner of the lake bed, using the natural hard-packed surface as a foundation and paving it with asphalt and concrete. They construct hangars where the U-2 can be assembled, maintained, and protected from the weather. They build administrative buildings, workshops, fuel storage tanks, a control tower. They set up temporary housing for the workers who will operate the facility. Trailers and prefabricated structures clustered together, basic but functional. All of this happens with remarkable speed. The first U-2 arrives at Groom Lake in July of 1955, less than a year after Kelly Johnson's team started designing it. The aircraft is unlike anything that exists at the time. Its wings span more than 80 feet, but the fuselage is narrow and delicate-looking. It has a single jet engine and sits on a bicycle-style landing gear, requiring small outrigger wheels under the wings for balance on the ground. It looks fragile, almost experimental, because in many ways it is. This is an aircraft built for a single purpose: to fly higher than any adversary can reach and take pictures of what's below. Tony Levier, Lockheed's chief test pilot, makes the first flight from Groom Lake in August 1955. The test is supposed to be just a high-speed taxi run, getting a feel for how the U-2 handles on the ground. But the aircraft is so eager to fly, its wings so efficient, that it lifts off the lake bed at a much lower speed than expected. Levier finds himself airborne before he intended to be, climbing into the Nevada sky, the desert falling away below. He flies the U-2 around the area for a few minutes, testing its basic handling characteristics, and then brings it back down for a landing that's rougher than he would have liked, but still successful. Over the following months, the testing program intensifies. Pilots selected for the U-2 program arrive at Groom Lake, a place they're told to refer to only as the ranch, if they speak of it at all. They practice flying the unusual aircraft, learning its quirks and capabilities. The U-2 is not easy to fly. At high altitude, the margin between stalling speed and maximum speed is razor thin. The aircraft is so light that turbulence affects it dramatically. Landing requires precision because the bicycle landing gear and lightweight structure leave little room for error, but it works. The U-2 can fly above 70,000 feet, where Soviet fighters and missiles can't reach it. The cameras it carries can photograph objects just a few feet across from that extreme altitude. In 1956, U-2s begin flying operational missions over the Soviet Union, crossing borders that are supposed to be inviolable, photographing military facilities and missile sites and industrial complexes, bringing back intelligence that changes American understanding of Soviet capabilities. And Groom Lake, Area 51, becomes something more than a temporary test facility. It becomes the place where America develops the aircraft it doesn't want anyone to know about. It becomes the workshop where impossible engineering challenges are solved away from scrutiny. It becomes a secret worth keeping. Let your mind drift now across those early years. Imagine the sound of the U-2's engine echoing off the mountains as it climbs into the deep blue Nevada sky. Imagine the test pilots, calm and professional, pushing an experimental aircraft to its limits because the stakes are high and the need is real. Imagine the ground crews working through the night in the hangars, troubleshooting problems, making modifications, preparing for the next flight. Imagine the security personnel posted at the perimeter, watching the roads and the desert, making sure no unauthorized eyes witness what's happening here. The desert holds these secrets easily. It has held secrets for millions of years. A few more make no difference to the ancient stones and sand. The Skunk Works era, engineering marvels. The U-2 is a triumph, but it is not the end of the story at Groom Lake. It's only the beginning. Kelly Johnson and his Skunk Works team understand that technology never stands still, that adversaries adapt, that today's breakthrough becomes tomorrow's vulnerability. Even as U-2s fly operational missions, Johnson is already thinking about what comes next. The U-2's advantage is altitude, flying so high that Soviet defenses can't touch it. But intelligence indicates the Soviets are developing new surface-to-air missiles with greater range and capability. It's only a matter of time before the U-2 sanctuary at 70,000 feet becomes reachable. In fact, this fear becomes reality in 1960 when a Soviet missile shoots down a U-2 flown by Francis Gary Powers over Soviet territory. The pilot survives and is captured, creating an international incident. The U-2 program continues. But the vulnerability is exposed. Something better is needed. The Air Force and the CIA want a reconnaissance aircraft that combines altitude with something else. Speed. Not just fast, but so fast that even if an enemy detects it and launches missiles, the aircraft can outrun them. They're talking about speeds that seem impossible. Speeds above 3 times the speed of sound. Speeds where the air friction heats the aircraft's skin to hundreds of degrees. They're talking about flying at the edge of space, where the sky turns dark blue, even in daytime, and the curvature of the Earth becomes visible. Kelly Johnson designs 2 aircraft to meet this challenge. The first, designated A-12, is developed for the CIA. The second, a variant called the SR-71, is developed for the Air Force. Both share the same radical design philosophy. Both are built at Groom Lake, tested at Groom Lake, and kept secret at Groom Lake for years before the world learns they exist. These aircraft look like they come from the future or from another planet entirely. They have long, slender fuselages that blend seamlessly into delta wings. They have twin engines mounted in nacelles that jut forward from the wings like predatory mandibles. They're painted dark blue-black, a color that absorbs radar energy and makes them hard to see against the sky. Every line, every curve, every surface is shaped to minimize radar reflection. These are stealth aircraft before the word stealth enters the general vocabulary. The engineering challenges are immense. At speeds above Mach 3, The air friction heats the aircraft's skin to 600 degrees Fahrenheit or higher. Normal aluminum, the standard aircraft material, would melt or lose its structural strength. Johnson's team turns instead to titanium, a metal that's extremely strong at high temperatures but notoriously difficult to work with. Titanium reacts with common chemicals and dulls cutting tools. The manufacturing techniques have to be developed from scratch. The SR-71, which eventually becomes the more famous of the two aircraft, is 95% titanium. Every part is manufactured with extraordinary precision. The fuel tanks are designed to leak when the aircraft is on the ground because the metal hasn't yet expanded from heat. Once the SR-71 gets up to speed and the skin heats up, the metal expands and the tanks seal themselves. The engines are unlike anything previously built, capable of functioning from subsonic speeds all the way up to Mach 3+. The cockpit instruments are designed to operate in extreme conditions. Even the cameras and sensors have to be specially built to survive the heat and vibration. Groom Lake in the late 1950s and early 1960s is a place of extraordinary activity, though from the outside it looks like almost nothing is happening. The facility expands, new hangars go up, larger and more sophisticated than the original structures. The runway is extended to accommodate aircraft with different performance characteristics. Housing improves from temporary trailers to more permanent buildings. Amenities are added because the workforce is growing, and people need places to eat, sleep, and relax during their time at the ranch. The workers arrive from Las Vegas every weekday morning on unmarked planes that aviation enthusiasts eventually nickname Janet flights because of the call sign used in air traffic control communications. These aircraft operate from a dedicated terminal at McCarran Airport, now called Harry Reid International Airport, far from the main passenger terminals. Workers board with no fanfare, no announcements, no identifying markers. The planes fly north into the desert, landing at Groom Lake about 40 minutes later. At the end of the workday, the process reverses. Most workers sleep in their own homes in Las Vegas and never spend the night at the facility, though some essential personnel do remain on site for extended periods. The security is comprehensive and enforced without exception. Everyone who works at Area 51 undergoes extensive background checks. Everyone signs non-disclosure agreements promising never to discuss what they see or do. The facility itself is surrounded by restricted airspace that extends for miles in every direction. The perimeter is patrolled by security personnel who take their job seriously. Motion sensors, cameras, and other detection systems watch for intruders. Warning signs are posted far from the actual boundary, making it clear that unauthorized entry is forbidden and will result in arrest. And yet, despite all this secrecy, there are leaks and rumors. People in Rachel and other nearby towns sometimes see strange lights in the sky above the Groom Range. They see aircraft that don't match anything they recognize flying at odd hours. They hear sounds, engine noises that seem unusual. The military has a policy of neither confirming nor denying what happens at the facility, which only fuels speculation. The A-12 makes its first flight from Groom Lake in 1962. The test goes well. Over the following years, the aircraft is refined, tested extensively, and eventually deployed on operational missions. The SR-71 follows, becoming operational in the mid-1960s. Both aircraft perform as designed, flying higher and faster than anything else in the sky. When an SR-71 pilot pushes the throttles forward and accelerates to maximum speed, the aircraft is moving fast enough to cross the continental United States in just over an hour. Ground-based observers see nothing but a dark streak, and hear, minutes later, the distinctive double sonic boom that marks the passage of something extraordinary. Life at Groom Lake during these years develops its own rhythms and culture. The engineers and technicians are devoted to their work, understanding that what they're doing matters, that the aircraft they're building and testing provide critical intelligence that keeps the nation safe. The test pilots are among the best in the world, selected not just for flying skill but for judgment, discipline, and the ability to keep secrets. There's a sense of camaraderie among those who work at the ranch, a shared understanding that they're part of something important that most people will never know about. The environment is harsh, but beautiful in its own way. Workers on breaks might step outside and look up at the impossibly clear sky. They might watch hawks circling in thermals or see dust devils dancing across the lake bed. They might, on rare occasions, be treated to spectacular thunderstorms that build over the mountains in summer afternoons, unleashing brief torrents of rain and dramatic displays of lightning before moving on, leaving the desert smelling fresh and renewed. The work is demanding. Hours can be long, especially when a test program is on a tight schedule. Problems arise that require creative solutions. Sometimes things break or don't work as expected, and teams have to troubleshoot under pressure. But there's satisfaction in solving these problems, in seeing an aircraft that was just a concept on paper take shape, fly, and prove its capabilities. Kelly Johnson remains the driving force behind much of this work, though he's based in Burbank and visits Groom Lake regularly rather than living there full-time. His design philosophy emphasizes simplicity, efficiency, and innovation. He believes small teams can accomplish more than large bureaucracies. He trusts his engineers to make decisions and holds them accountable for results. This approach works extraordinarily well. The Skunk Works develops a reputation for delivering impossible aircraft on time and on budget, a rarity in the world of defense contracting. As the 1960s progress, Area 51 becomes established as America's premier testing ground for classified aircraft. Other projects come and go, some successful, some less so. Not everything that's tested here works perfectly the first time, or even the second or third time. But the facility provides the space, security, and expertise needed to push boundaries, to try things that might fail, to learn from failures and improve. Let yourself imagine walking through those hangars in your mind, the smell of jet fuel and hydraulic fluid and metal, the sound of tools and machinery, and occasionally an engine roaring to life for a ground test, the sight of aircraft in various states of assembly or disassembly, some covered by tarps to protect them from dust, some exposed and gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The presence of people who know they're part of something significant, something that will matter in ways they might not fully understand for years or decades. The desert outside remains unchanged, patient, eternal. The mountains watch without judgment. The stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns. And beneath that vast sky, humans continue their work, building machines that seem to defy the possible. Breaking the sound barrier and beyond speed has always held a particular fascination for aircraft designers and pilots. There's something fundamentally thrilling about going faster, pushing against the limits of what physics and engineering allow. At Groom Lake, during the 1960s and beyond, that fascination reaches its apex with aircraft that don't just break the sound barrier, but leave it far behind. Aircraft that fly so fast, they create their own unique challenges and solutions. The sound barrier itself had been broken years earlier, in 1947, when Chuck Yeager flew the Bell X-1 faster than Mach 1. But there's a vast difference between briefly exceeding the speed of sound in a rocket-powered experimental aircraft and sustaining speeds of Mach 3 or higher in an operational reconnaissance plane that needs to fly for hours at a time. The A-12 and SR-71 represent that difference, and Groom Lake is where these aircraft prove they can do what their designers claim. The A-12, developed first, is in some ways the more radical of the two designs. It's smaller than the SR-71, built for a single pilot rather than a crew of two. It's designed to be air refuelable, meaning it can take off with relatively light fuel loads, meet a tanker aircraft at altitude, fill its tanks completely, and then proceed on its mission. This capability is essential because the aircraft burns fuel at prodigious rates when flying at maximum speed. Testing the A-12 at Groom Lake reveals issues that the design team hadn't fully anticipated. The aircraft is stable and controllable at high speeds, but the landing approach requires careful attention. The long delta wings generate enormous lift, which is helpful at altitude but makes it difficult to descend and slow down. Pilots have to plan their approaches carefully, beginning their descent from far out, managing their energy precisely. Touchdown too fast, and the landing gear might not handle the stress. Touchdown too slow, and the aircraft might stall just above the runway, dropping hard onto the lake bed, with potentially catastrophic results. One of the A-12's most remarkable features is its ability to simply outrun threats. If an enemy radar detects it and launches missiles, the solution is straightforward. Accelerate. At speeds above Mach 3, the A-12 is faster than any missile of its era. By the time an enemy realizes the aircraft is in their airspace and responds, it's already gone, dozens of miles away and climbing higher or turning in a direction that makes interception impossible. The SR-71, the Air Force variant, adds a second crew member, a reconnaissance systems officer who sits behind the pilot and operates the cameras, sensors, and defensive systems. This crew concept improves the aircraft's effectiveness on missions that require managing multiple systems simultaneously. The SR-71 becomes operational in the mid-1960s and serves for more than 3 decades, eventually becoming one of the most famous aircraft in history, though that fame comes later, after much of its operation is declassified. Flying these aircraft requires special suits, almost like space suits. At the altitudes where the A-12 and SR-71 operate, the air pressure is so low that a pilot's blood would boil if exposed directly to the environment. The suits are custom fitted to each pilot, made of multiple layers that provide pressure, temperature regulation, and protection. Before every flight, the pilot goes through a preparation ritual that includes breathing pure oxygen to purge nitrogen from the bloodstream, preventing decompression sickness. The suit is uncomfortable, restrictive, hot on the ground before takeoff, and absolutely essential once airborne. Imagine the experience of flying one of these aircraft. You're strapped into a cockpit that's cramped and filled with instruments. The canopy closes, sealing you in. The engines start with a roar that shakes the entire airframe. You taxi out to the runway, the aircraft feeling heavy and sluggish on the ground, nothing like the graceful machine it becomes in the air. Clearance comes from the tower. You advance the throttles, feel the acceleration pressing you back into your seat. The aircraft picks up speed quickly, faster and faster, until the nose lifts and you're climbing away from the lake bed. The ascent is steady and powerful. The SR-71 climbs like it's being pulled upward by an invisible cable. You watch the altimeter win through 40,000 feet, 50,000, 60,000. The sky outside darkens from blue to deep blue to something approaching black. The curvature of the earth becomes visible on the horizon. You're above almost all of the atmosphere now, in a realm where few humans have ever ventured. And then you accelerate. The throttles go forward, afterburners light, and the aircraft surges ahead. The Mach meter climbs. 1.5, 2.0, 2.5. At Mach 3, you're covering roughly 35 miles per minute. The world below is a distant, abstract patterns of light and dark. Geography reduced to shapes and colors. If you look down through the special windows designed into the aircraft, you can see entire states passing beneath you in minutes. The temperature outside the cockpit is hundreds of degrees below zero, but the friction of the air against the aircraft's skin heats the titanium to 600 degrees Fahrenheit. The nose glows faintly red in certain lighting. The fuel in the tanks actually serves as a coolant, circulating through channels to carry heat away from critical components before being burned in the engines. Everything is interconnected. Everything serves multiple purposes. Because at these speeds and altitudes, there's no room for inefficiency or wasted weight. Back at Groom Lake, the ground crews wait and monitor. Radio communications are sporadic at these altitudes and speeds. Sometimes there are long silences where everyone just waits, trusting that the pilot and aircraft are doing what they're supposed to be doing somewhere far from the ranch. When the aircraft returns, its approach is visible from miles away, a dark speck that grows larger, descending from the heavens, slowing, configuring for landing. The landing itself is an event. The SR-71 touches down at speeds that would be cruise speed for many conventional aircraft. A drag chute deploys to help slow it. The brakes, specially designed for extreme temperatures, work to bring thousands of pounds of aircraft from racing speed to taxi speed. Ground crews immediately converge, checking systems, safe the aircraft, helping the pilot out of the cockpit after flights that might have lasted hours. The SR-71's performance characteristics become the stuff of legend among those who know about it. The aircraft's official speed record, set in 1976, is 2,193 miles per hour, though pilots who flew it say it could go faster if needed. The official altitude record is 85,000 feet, though again, the aircraft was capable of higher flight. These records are set deliberately, with some margin left deliberately unreported, because even in demonstrating capability, there's value in keeping some capabilities secret. Testing programs at the ranch continue through the 1960s and into the 1970s. Not everything tested is a reconnaissance aircraft. Some programs explore other technologies, other concepts, but the thread that connects them all is the need for secrecy, for a place where ideas can be tested without the world watching, where failures can happen without public scrutiny, where success can be achieved and then quietly deployed without fanfare. The culture at Area 51 during these years is one of quiet professionalism. The people who work here understand they're part of something important, but can't talk about it with friends or family. They learn to deflect questions, to be vague about what they do for a living. "I work for the government" becomes a standard answer. "I'm involved in aerospace research" is another. The non-disclosure agreements they signed aren't just pieces of paper. They're bonds of trust that most people honor for decades, sometimes for the rest of their lives. There are legends about close calls and near disasters. Stories about test flights that didn't go as planned but ended safely due to skill or luck or both. Tales of improvisation when equipment failed and standard procedures had to be abandoned in favor of quick thinking. These stories circulate quietly among those who were there, shared in private moments, never written down, part of an oral history that exists parallel to the official records. The desert witnesses, all of it without comment. The lakebed sees aircraft land and take off at all hours. The mountains echo with the sounds of engines testing at full power. The sky absorbs the trails and exhaust and presence of machines that push the boundaries of the possible. And the vast silence, that deep desert silence, returns each time the engines shut down and the crews go home. The stealth revolution as the 1970s progress, a new challenge emerges for military aviation, one that requires rethinking not just how fast an aircraft can fly or how high, but whether it can be seen at all. Radar has become the dominant way that militaries detect and track aircraft. Surface-to-air missiles use radar to guide themselves to their targets. Fighter aircraft use radar to find enemy planes from dozens of miles away. The advantage now belongs not necessarily to the fastest or highest flying aircraft, but to the one that can avoid detection in the first place. This leads to the development of stealth technology, and once again, Groom Lake becomes the proving ground. The aircraft that emerged from this research look nothing like the sleek, elegant lines of the SR-71. Instead, they're angular and faceted, built from flat surfaces, arranged at carefully calculated angles, looking more like geometric sculptures than traditional aircraft. But these unusual shapes serve a critical purpose. They scatter radar energy away from the transmitter rather than reflecting it back, making the aircraft nearly invisible to radar systems. The story begins with a small experimental aircraft called Have Blue, developed by Lockheed's Skunk Works under a highly classified program. Have Blue is tiny compared to operational military aircraft, barely larger than a compact car, built to test whether the radical theories about radar-evading shapes actually work in practice. The aircraft makes its first flight from Groom Lake in 1977, and the results are remarkable. Radar systems that should easily detect an aircraft at that range and altitude simply don't see Have Blue. It works, but Have Blue is just a demonstrator. What follows is the F-117 Nighthawk, a full-size operational aircraft built using the same principles. The F-17 is strange to look at. Its flat, angular surfaces give it an appearance that many people compare to a stealth fighter from a science fiction movie, though in this case, the reality precedes the fiction. It has no curves, no smooth transitions. Every surface is a flat panel set at a specific angle. Even the cockpit glass is divided into flat sections. The engines are buried deep inside the fuselage to hide their heat signature from infrared sensors. The F-117 doesn't just look odd. It's genuinely difficult to fly. The shape that makes it stealthy makes it aerodynamically unstable. Without computers constantly making tiny adjustments to the control surfaces, the aircraft would tumble out of the sky. Pilots essentially fly the computers, which then fly the aircraft. It's a partnership between human and machine that requires trust and skill. Testing the F-Park 117 at Groom Lake takes years. The aircraft makes its first flight in 1981, but the program remains classified for nearly a decade. During that time, a squadron of F-117s operates from a base near the ranch, flying only at night, hidden during the day in specially constructed hangars. Pilots and ground crews live a double life, telling their families they work regular hours in conventional jobs while actually flying the most advanced aircraft in the world under cover of darkness. The secrecy surrounding the F-117 is extraordinary even by Area 51 standards. When an F-117 crashes in 1986, killing the pilot, the entire crash site is sanitized and the wreckage removed before investigators who don't have appropriate clearances are allowed near. The families of pilots are told their loved ones fly training missions in standard aircraft. Maintenance crews sign additional non-disclosure agreements beyond the ones they signed to work at the facility in the first place. The desert night becomes the F-117's natural environment. The aircraft takes off after sunset, its dark gray paint making it nearly invisible against the night sky. It flies low and fast, using terrain to mask its approach, relying on its stealth characteristics to avoid detection even when radar systems sweep the sky. During test missions from Groom Lake, the F-117 practices attacking simulated targets scattered across the Nevada test site, dropping inert bombs with remarkable precision, proving that stealth and accuracy can coexist. The technology that makes the F-117 invisible to radar involves more than just shape. The aircraft's skin is coated with special radar-absorbent materials that soak up radar energy like a sponge absorbs water. These coatings are delicate and require constant maintenance. Ground crews spend hours after every flight checking the coating, repairing any damage, ensuring the aircraft maintains its stealth characteristics. It's labor-intensive and demanding work but essential to the aircraft's survival in combat. Flying a stealth aircraft requires a different mindset than flying conventional planes. F-117 pilots know they're nearly invisible, but not completely so. There are radar frequencies and geometries that can detect the aircraft under certain conditions. The key is never to give the enemy a good look, to constantly change altitude and heading, to use darkness and terrain and speed to remain elusive. It's like being a ghost, bare but not bare, present but undetectable. The F-117 eventually sees combat in 1989 during the invasion of Panama, though very few people know it at the time. The aircraft proves its worth, striking targets with precision while avoiding detection. Later, during the Gulf War in 1991, F-117s carry out critical strikes against Iraqi command facilities and air defense sites, often flying into heavily defended areas that conventional aircraft couldn't safely approach. The success of these missions validates years of development and testing at Groom Lake. But even as the F-117 proves itself in combat, work continues at Area 51 on next-generation stealth aircraft. The B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, developed by Northrop rather than Lockheed, uses a completely different approach to stealth, emphasizing smooth curves and blended wing body design rather than the faceted surfaces of the FP-117. Though the B-2 is primarily tested at other facilities, some of its technology and components are evaluated at Groom Lake, contributing to the site's reputation as the center of American stealth aircraft development. The lessons learned from Have Blue and the F-117 influence aircraft design for decades to come. Stealth becomes a standard consideration rather than an exotic special capability. Modern fighters like the F-22 and F-35 incorporate stealth features from their initial design rather than adding them as afterthoughts. The angular faceted approach gradually gives way to more sophisticated computer-aided designs that achieve stealth while also improving aerodynamic performance. But the fundamental principles are established at Groom Lake in those flights through the Nevada night. The security at Area 51 during the stealth programs is layered and comprehensive. Beyond the physical perimeter security, there are compartmented security programs that restrict information even among people who work at the facility. Someone working on one project might have no idea what's happening in the hangar next door. Information is shared on a strict need-to-know basis. Documents are carefully controlled, marked with classification levels and distribution restrictions. Even casual conversations in the dining facility are monitored to ensure no one accidentally reveals information they shouldn't. Despite all these precautions, or perhaps because of them, Area 51 develops an aura of mystery that extends far beyond the classified programs actually conducted there. The combination of genuine secret aircraft and rigorous security creates an information vacuum that speculation rushes to fill. People see lights in the sky and assume they're seeing something extraordinary. They hear sounds they can't immediately identify and leap to conclusions. The truth is remarkable enough, but when truth is hidden, imagination runs wild. Let your mind wander now through those hangars where the F-117 sits between flights, its angular shape casting strange shadows in the fluorescent light. Imagine the sound of its engines, different from the roar of conventional fighters, more of a muted thunder. Picture the ground crew preparing it for a night flight, checking systems, loading navigation data, ensuring everything is perfect because there's no room for error when you're flying a multi-million-dollar aircraft that the enemy isn't supposed to see. The desert outside is cool now. In your imagination, the sun long since set, the stars brilliant overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote calls, its voice carrying across the empty spaces. The mountains are dark silhouettes, against the slightly lighter sky. And on the runway, the F-117 begins its takeoff roll, accelerating into the darkness, lifting off, climbing away, its navigation lights soon disappearing as the pilot switches to full stealth configuration. It's there, somewhere above the desert, but you can't see it, and radar can't track it. It's a ghost made real, a secret written in titanium and composite materials and computer code, legends, lights, and lore. The secrecy surrounding Area 51 inevitably breeds speculation, and speculation, when mixed with genuine mystery and occasional misidentification, creates legends that take on lives of their own. Throughout the 1980s and into the 1990s, Area 51 becomes synonymous not just with classified aircraft, but with UFOs, alien technology, and conspiracy theories that range from plausible to wildly imaginative. Some of this is understandable. People living in towns near Groom Lake occasionally see lights in the sky that move in unusual ways. What they're often seeing are classified aircraft being tested at night, aircraft whose performance characteristics don't match anything publicly known to exist. A stealth fighter making sharp turns at high speed, illuminated by moonlight or its own navigation lights, can look genuinely otherworldly. The SR-71, or its predecessor, the A-12, seen briefly at high altitude, appears as nothing more than a strange light moving incredibly fast across the sky. The distinction between unidentified and alien is crucial, but often lost in the excitement of seeing something unusual. An unidentified flying object is simply something in the sky that the observer can't identify. It doesn't necessarily mean extraterrestrial spacecraft. More often it means classified military aircraft, conventional aircraft seen under unusual conditions, atmospheric phenomena, satellites, or any number of terrestrial explanations. But I saw lights I couldn't identify is less compelling than I saw a UFO, and the leap from unidentified to alien is one that many people make eagerly. Area 51's role in this cultural phenomenon intensifies significantly in 1989 when a man named Bob Lazar gives interviews claiming he worked at a facility near Groom Lake on projects involving recovered alien spacecraft. Lazar's story is detailed and specific. He claims the facility, which he calls S4, is located near Papoose Lake, south of Groom Lake. He describes working on propulsion systems that use an element he calls Element 115 and that operate on principles beyond current human understanding. He claims to have seen 9 different alien spacecraft, disc-shaped vehicles of varying sizes. The response to Lazar's claims divides sharply. Some people believe him completely, treating his statements as confirmation of what they've long suspected about Area 51 and government secrecy regarding extraterrestrial contact. Others are skeptical, pointing out inconsistencies in his story and the lack of verifiable evidence for his claimed credentials and employment. The debate continues to this day, more than 3 decades later, with neither side convincing the other. What's verifiable is more modest. Lazar did work for a contractor at the Nevada test site in the late 1980s. Though the nature of that work and whether it extended to Groom Lake or the claimed S4 facility remains disputed. Element 115, which Lazar described before it was officially synthesized, was indeed created in laboratories years later, though it has properties quite different from what Lazar claimed. The specific details he provides about supposed alien technology don't match any subsequently verified physics or engineering principles. But believers argue that's because the technology is beyond current human understanding. The truth about what Lazar saw or experienced, if anything beyond conventional work at a conventional facility, may never be fully established. But his claims have an enormous impact on Area 51's public perception. The site becomes inextricably linked with UFO lore. Tours and businesses spring up in Rachel, the nearest town, catering to people hoping to see something unusual. The stretch of Nevada State Route 375 near the area is officially designated the Extraterrestrial Highway. A small restaurant in Rachel, the Little Aloe Inn, becomes a gathering place for UFO enthusiasts and curious tourists. The irony is that the real work at Area 51 is extraordinary enough without invoking aliens. The aircraft tested there represents some of the most advanced engineering achievements in human history. The U-2 revolutionized reconnaissance. The SR-71 proved that aircraft could sustain speeds that seemed impossible. The F-117 demonstrated that carefully shaped objects could effectively disappear from radar. These are genuine accomplishments, remarkable feats of science and engineering, achieved by human ingenuity and determination. But classified aircraft can explain only some of the unusual sightings in the area. The Nevada desert is also home to various atmospheric phenomena that can create optical effects. Temperature inversions can cause lights from distant sources to appear to hover or move strangely. Ball lightning, though rare, does occur and can create luminous spheres that drift and maneuver in ways that seem to defy conventional physics. Military flares, dropped during training exercises, can hang in the air on parachutes, glowing brightly and moving with the wind. Venus, when bright and low on the horizon, has been mistaken for a UFO countless times throughout history. The military and intelligence communities, for their part, sometimes benefit from UFO speculation. If people want to believe that strange lights are alien spacecraft rather than classified aircraft, that provides a kind of cover. Let people think what they want, as long as they're not correctly identifying the actual source. There's no need to actively promote UFO theories, but there's also no urgent need to debunk them if debunking would require revealing classified information. This creates a strange dynamic where genuine classified programs, legitimate atmospheric phenomena, honest misidentifications, and deliberate mythology all coexist in the public imagination surrounding Area 51. Separating one from another becomes nearly impossible for outside observers. The facility remains classified. The Air Force neither confirms nor denies specific activities, and the information vacuum fills with speculation that ranges from remarkably accurate informed guesses to complete fantasy. Some of the more extreme conspiracy theories go far beyond simple claims of alien spacecraft. Some people believe Area 51 houses living extraterrestrials, either as guests sharing technology or as prisoners being studied. Some claim the facility extends miles underground, with entire levels dedicated to research that would seem like science fiction. Some even suggest that events like the moon landing were faked and filmed at Area 51, though this particular theory ignores the enormous amount of independent evidence confirming the reality of the Apollo program. The reasonable middle ground acknowledges that Area 51 is real, is indeed classified, does test advanced aircraft, and has been the site of remarkable engineering achievements. It also acknowledges that most UFO sightings have prosaic explanations, that Bob Lazar's claims remain unverified despite extensive investigation, and that while the universe likely contains other intelligent life, there's no confirmed evidence that such life has visited Earth or that any government possesses alien technology. But facts and reason sometimes struggle against the appeal of mystery. There's something compelling about the idea that not all the answers are known, that some secrets remain hidden, that reality might be stranger than we're told. Area 51, by its very nature as a classified facility, invites this kind of thinking. The more the military refuses to discuss what happens there, the more people assume something extraordinary must be happening. Picture now the night sky over the Nevada desert, vast and full of stars. A light moves across that sky, steady and bright. Is it a satellite? An aircraft? Something else? Without more information, it's impossible to say with certainty. And in that uncertainty lies the seed of legend. Someone sees it and wonders. They tell a friend, who tells another. The story grows in the telling. Details are added or changed. What started as an honest observation of something unusual becomes, over time, a tale of the extraordinary. The desert keeps its secrets. The mountains don't speak. And Area 51, whatever its actual purpose and activities, continues to test aircraft and technologies that most people will never see or know about, at least not for years or decades after they've been developed. Life in the shadows. For all the legends and speculation that surround Area 51, there's a more mundane reality experienced by the thousands of people who have worked there over the decades. They're engineers and technicians, pilots and support staff, security personnel and administrators. They have families and mortgages, hobbies and friends. They go to work like millions of other Americans, except their workplace happens to be one of the most secretive facilities in the country. The typical workday for someone employed at Area 51 starts early. Most workers live in Las Vegas or nearby communities. They drive to McCarran Airport, now Harry Reid International, well before dawn, heading to a dedicated terminal far from the main passenger areas. The terminal is unremarkable, a low building with minimal signage. Inside, security is thorough. Identification is checked carefully. Some days there are random searches of bags and personal items. The atmosphere is professional but not particularly friendly. This isn't a place for casual conversation with strangers. The aircraft that fly workers to Groom Lake are usually Boeing 737s, painted in distinctive white with a red stripe, though the livery has varied over the years. These are known informally as Janet flights, though no one's entirely certain where the name comes from. Some say it stands for just another non-existent terminal, but that's likely a backronym created after the nickname was already in use. The planes are maintained to commercial standards, comfortable enough for the short flight, unremarkable except for their destination. The flight itself takes about 40 minutes, heading north from Las Vegas into increasingly empty desert. Looking out the window, passengers see the landscape change from the developed areas near the city to open desert, mountains, valleys, and eventually the restricted zones of the Nevada test site. Some workers read or sleep during the flight. Others stare out the windows, perhaps never quite getting used to the idea that they're flying to a place that officially doesn't exist. Landing at Groom Lake happens on a runway that's remarkably long and well-maintained, far better than many civilian airports. The lakebed itself serves as an additional landing surface, useful for aircraft with special requirements or during emergencies. As the plane taxis to the terminal area, passengers can see hangars, buildings, a control tower, vehicles moving about. It looks like a small airport or military base, which, in essence, it is, just one with more secrets than most. Exiting the aircraft, workers board buses that take them to their respective work areas. The facility is larger than it appears from any single vantage point, with buildings spread across a significant area. Some structures are obviously hangars, large enough to house multiple aircraft. Others are administrative buildings, workshops, laboratories, or storage facilities. The architecture is purely functional, no effort wasted on aesthetics. Everything is painted in neutral colors that blend with the desert. The work itself varies enormously depending on one's role. Engineers might spend their days analyzing test data, modifying designs, preparing for the next flight. Technicians maintain aircraft, troubleshoot systems, conduct pre-flight inspections that can take hours for complex experimental planes. Pilots prepare for test flights, reviewing procedures, attending briefings, undergoing medical checks. Support staff handle everything from food service to facility maintenance to security monitoring. It's a complete self-contained community dedicated to a single purpose: testing and evaluating classified aircraft and technologies. During breaks, workers might gather in a cafeteria that serves decent if uninspired food. Conversation is careful. Even here, among people who all have security clearances, there are limits to what can be discussed. Someone working on one project doesn't necessarily know details about other projects. Compartmentalization is the rule. You know what you need to know for your job, and not necessarily much beyond that. The environment is professional but can be intense. Deadlines matter. When a test program is on a tight schedule, people work long hours, sometimes sleeping at the facility in modest dormitories rather than making the daily commute back to Las Vegas. The pressure to succeed is significant. These programs are expensive and important. Failures are analyzed thoroughly to prevent recurrence. Successes are noted, but often without much celebration, because the work is secret and there's always another challenge waiting. Security is omnipresent, but becomes routine for those who work here regularly. Badges must be displayed at all times. Certain areas require additional authorization even for people who already work at the facility. Cameras watch from many angles. Security personnel patrol regularly. The message is clear. This is a controlled environment where rules are followed without exception. Violations can result in immediate termination and potential criminal charges depending on the severity. Despite this secrecy, or perhaps because of it, there's a sense of camaraderie among workers. They're part of something that most people don't know about and couldn't do. There's pride in that, quiet satisfaction in contributing to national security in ways that won't be publicly acknowledged. Some workers spend entire careers associated with Area 51 in one capacity or another, developing expertise that's unique and valuable. Pilots who test classified aircraft at Groom Lake are among the most skilled and experienced in the world. They've typically flown numerous aircraft types, accumulated thousands of hours, and demonstrated not just technical proficiency, but judgment and calm under pressure. Test flying is inherently risky. You're taking an aircraft that's never flown before, or that's been modified in ways that change its characteristics, and you're exploring its limits. Things can go wrong. Good pilots know how to recognize when something's not right and how to respond before a problem becomes a crisis. The landscape around the facility becomes familiar to long-term workers. They learn the shapes of the mountains, the color of the desert at different times of day and year, the quality of light that's unique to this high, dry environment. Some come to appreciate the stark beauty of the place. Others never quite adjust to the isolation and harshness, but all of them understand they're working somewhere unusual, somewhere that will be part of history, even if their individual contributions remain anonymous. Families of Area 51 workers live with unusual constraints. Spouses and children learn not to ask too many questions about where dad or mom goes to work. "I work on aircraft for the government" becomes a standard explanation that satisfies most casual inquiries. Close friends might know a bit more, but even they don't get details. It's a life that requires trust and acceptance that some things can't be shared. Retirement from Area 51 work doesn't necessarily mean freedom to talk. Non-disclosure agreements typically don't have expiration dates. Many former workers take their secrets to the grave, never telling even their closest family members what they actually did during their years at the ranch. Others wait until programs are declassified and then carefully, within the bounds of what's now public, share some stories. But even then, there are usually aspects that remain classified, gaps in the narrative that can't be filled. The Janet flights that bring workers to Groom Lake each morning reverse the process each evening. Buses bring people back to the terminal. They board the aircraft for the flight back to Las Vegas. By evening, they're home, back in the normal world. where neighbors are washing cars and children are playing and life proceeds in ordinary ways. The contrast can be jarring. Spend your day working on an aircraft that represents the cutting edge of human technology, then come home to mow the lawn and take out the trash. But that's the reality for most people involved with Area 51. They're not action movie characters or conspiracy theory villains. They're professionals doing a job, one that happens to involve more secrecy than most. Let yourself imagine now that daily routine, the pre-dawn drive to the airport, the security check, the boarding of an unmarked plane, the flight over empty desert, the landing at a place that doesn't officially exist, the work demanding and important, the return flight as the sun sets and the desert cools, the drive home through Las Vegas traffic, the ordinary evening with family, unable to discuss the extraordinary things that filled your day. It's a life lived partly in shadow, partly in light, with a clear line between the two that cannot be crossed. Declassification and recognition. For decades, Area 51 exists in a peculiar state. Everyone knows it's real, but the government refuses to officially acknowledge it. This changes, finally, in 2013, when the CIA releases documents that explicitly name Groom Lake and Area 51 as a testing site for the U-2 program. The acknowledgement comes following a Freedom of Information Act request and subsequent lawsuit. The documents, heavily redacted in many places, confirm what aviation experts and researchers have long known but couldn't officially verify. The documents were obtained by Jeffrey Richelson, a senior fellow with George Washington University's National Security Archive. He had requested these same documents years earlier, but in that version, every mention of Area 51 had been blacked out, redacted, removed from the official record. When he requested them again in 2005, patience was rewarded. The new version, released in 2013, includes not just mentions of Area 51, but an actual map showing its location at Groom Lake in Nevada. For the first time, the government acknowledged in clear, unambiguous terms that this place exists and what at least some of its historical purposes were. The declassified history, titled The Central Intelligence Agency and Overhead Reconnaissance, runs to 355 pages. It tells the story of how Richard Bissell, Kelly Johnson, Colonel Osmond Ridland, and test pilot Tony Levier flew over Nevada in April of 1955, looking for a suitable testing location. It describes their reaction upon seeing the old airstrip at Groom Lake, abandoned since World War II, but still potentially useful. The document quotes Levier saying they almost didn't land because the dry lake bed looked so rough from the air, but they decided to try it and found the surface was actually quite smooth and firm. The history goes on to detail the establishment of the facility, the arrival of the first U-2 aircraft in July 1955, the beginning of test flights, and the eventual operational deployment of the spy plane program. It explains how the CIA referred to the location as Paradise Ranch to make it sound more appealing to workers who might otherwise be reluctant to spend time in such a remote, harsh environment. The actual conditions, of course, were far from paradisiacal, at least at first. Early workers lived in trailers and temporary structures, endured extreme temperatures, and made do with basic amenities. The documents acknowledge that the U-2's high-altitude flights were responsible for many UFO sightings during the 1950s and 60s. Commercial airline pilots and air traffic controllers would occasionally report seeing objects at altitudes that shouldn't be possible for conventional aircraft. What they were seeing, in many cases, were U-2s flying at 60,000 feet or higher, altitudes where the thin air and the angle of sunlight could make the aircraft appear unusual or otherworldly. The CIA history notes this connection explicitly, confirming what researchers had long suspected. Importantly, the declassification doesn't reveal everything. The documents primarily cover the U-2 program from 1955 through the early 1960s. Later programs, including the A-12 and SR-71 development, the F-117 stealth fighter testing, and anything that's happened at Groom Lake more recently, remain classified. The Air Force took over primary control of the facility in the mid-1970s, and details of activities after that transfer are still protected by national security restrictions. The facility remains active, operational, and classified. The 2013 acknowledgement is a glimpse into history, not a complete revelation of everything Area 51 has been or currently is. The public reaction to the declassification is mixed. Aviation historians and researchers who have studied Area 51 for years greet it as valuable confirmation, but not as surprising news. They've pieced together much of this information from interviews with former workers, analysis of flight patterns, examination of satellite imagery, and careful reading of partially redacted documents. The official acknowledgement simply confirms what they already believed to be true. UFO enthusiasts have a different reaction. Some see the declassification as a positive step toward greater transparency. If the government can acknowledge Area 51's existence and discuss the U-2 program, perhaps more revelations will follow. Others remain skeptical, arguing that the documents reveal only what the government wants people to know, that the really interesting information remains hidden. The lack of any mention of extraterrestrial craft or alien technology in the declassified documents doesn't necessarily convince those who believe such things exist. They simply argue that those programs are even more classified than the U-2 history and won't be revealed for many more years, if ever. The broader significance of the 2013 declassification extends beyond the specific details it reveals. It represents a shift in how the government approaches secrecy about facilities and programs that are decades old. There's a recognition that some information, once the relevant technology has been superseded and the strategic advantage has diminished, can be released without harming current national security. The U-2 program, while still operational in modified form, uses technology from the 1950s. Acknowledging its testing location 60 years after the fact poses little risk. This creates a kind of rolling declassification, where information gradually becomes public as it ages and loses its sensitivity. Future researchers might eventually learn more about the F-117 program, the testing of captured foreign aircraft, and other Cold War-era activities at Groom Lake. But information about current programs will remain classified, maintaining the facility's role as a place where secret work continues away from public scrutiny. The physical site itself has evolved considerably from the basic facilities established in 1955. Satellite imagery, which anyone can access through commercial services, shows an extensive complex with multiple large hangars, long runways, numerous support buildings, and infrastructure that suggests ongoing active operations. The runway has been extended multiple times over the decades, now stretching more than 2 miles long, capable of accommodating virtually any aircraft. New hangars appear in satellite images every few years, suggesting that whatever is being tested there requires sophisticated facilities. The surrounding area has also changed, though less dramatically. The town of Rachel, Nevada, population approximately 50, has embraced its proximity to Area 51 as a tourist draw. The Little Alien Inn restaurant and motel, whose name is a play on Little Alien, sells souvenirs and serves meals to visitors hoping to catch a glimpse of something unusual. State Route 375, which runs near the facility, was officially designated the Extraterrestrial Highway in 1996, complete with road signs featuring flying saucers. It's all done with a sense of humor and an understanding that mystery attracts visitors who spend money in an area that otherwise has little economic activity. The perimeter of Area 51 itself remains heavily secured and off-limits. Warning signs are posted miles from the actual facilities, making it clear that photography is prohibited, trespassing is forbidden, and that deadly force is authorized for security purposes. The boundaries are monitored by motion sensors, cameras, and guards who patrol in trucks and who are known locally as camo dudes because of their desert camouflage uniforms. People who get too close are intercepted quickly and typically face substantial fines or arrest, depending on how far they've ventured into restricted territory. There have been occasional incidents over the years. In 2019, a social media event jokingly proposed that people should storm Area 51, inches to see them aliens. What started as an internet meme grew into something that local and federal authorities had to take seriously. Given that hundreds of thousands of people indicated online that they planned to attend, in the end, a much smaller number actually showed up in the desert, and the event was largely peaceful, more of a festival than an actual attempt to breach security. But it demonstrated the enduring fascination that Area 51 holds in popular culture. For the people who actually work at the facility, the declassification and public attention are largely irrelevant to their daily jobs. They continue to clock in, do their work, maintain security protocols, and go home without discussing what they do. The Janet flights still depart from Las Vegas every weekday morning, still land at Groom Lake, still return workers in the evening. New aircraft, new technologies, new programs move through the testing pipeline. Each one classified, each one known only to those who need to know. Each one contributing to American aerospace capabilities in ways that won't be publicly acknowledged for years or decades. The desert surrounding Area 51 continues in its ancient patterns, indifferent to human activities. The seasons turn. Winter brings cold and occasionally snow to the surrounding mountains. Spring brings brief blooms if the rainfall has been adequate. Summer brings scorching heat that makes the lake bed shimmer and dance in the distance. Autumn brings cooling temperatures and crystalline clarity to the air. The mountains stand. The dry lake bed endures. The stars wheel overhead in their eternal configurations. And beneath that vast sky, humans continue their work, pushing boundaries, solving problems, building machines that extend human capability in ways that would have seemed impossible in earlier eras. The story of Area 51 is, ultimately, a human story. It's about ingenuity and determination, about people solving difficult problems because the solutions matter. It's about pilots who test aircraft that might kill them if something goes wrong. It's about engineers who design systems that operate at the edge of the possible. It's about technicians who maintain equipment with precision and care. It's about security personnel who protect secrets they themselves might not fully understand. It's about ordinary people doing extraordinary work in a place that most of the world will never see. And it's about the tension between secrecy and transparency, between the need to protect information that provides strategic advantage and the desire for openness in a democratic society. That tension has never been fully resolved and probably never will be. Different people will always have different opinions about where the line should be drawn, about what should be classified and what should be public, about how much secrecy is necessary and how much is excessive. What's certain is that Area 51 will continue to exist, will continue to serve as a testing ground for classified aerospace programs, and will continue to capture public imagination. The 2013 declassification answered some questions, but it raised others. Every answer creates new questions. Every peek behind the curtain of secrecy reveals enough to tantalize, but not enough to fully satisfy curiosity. The endless desert night. Let yourself drift now, your mind wandering across that vast Nevada desert as night deepens and the stars grow brighter overhead. The air is cool against your skin in this imagining, the temperature having dropped steadily since the sun disappeared behind the western mountains. The silence is profound, broken only occasionally by the distant call of a coyote. with a whisper of wind moving across the lake bed. Groom Lake stretches before you, pale in the starlight, its surface seeming to glow faintly with reflected moonlight. The mountains are dark shapes against the sky, their ridges and peaks outlined by stars so numerous they seem impossible if you're used to city skies. This is how the night sky looked for most of human history, before electric lights made the stars disappear from view for most people. This is the sky that ancient peoples knew intimately, that guided travelers and marked the changing seasons and inspired countless stories and myths. Somewhere in the distance, there might be lights from the Area 51 facility, though from where you stand in your imagination, they're too far away to see clearly. Just a faint suggestion of human presence in this otherwise empty landscape. Or perhaps the facilities are dark tonight, the aircraft and equipment secured, the workers having returned to Las Vegas on the evening Janet flights, the place quiet, except for security personnel making their rounds and monitoring their instruments. Think about all the history this place has witnessed, all the flights that have taken off from this lake bed, climbing into this same sky you're imagining now. The U-2s in the 1950s, so light and delicate they seemed almost fragile, yet capable of flying higher than anything else in existence at the time. The A-12s and SR-71s in the 60s and 70s, dark and sleek and impossibly fast, leaving sonic booms echoing off the mountains as they accelerated to speeds that still seem remarkable today. The F-117s flying in darkness, angular and strange, nearly invisible to radar, representing a completely new approach to aerial warfare. An aircraft we don't know about yet, programs still classified, technologies still secret, additions to this long history that won't be revealed for years or decades. Each of these aircraft represents countless hours of design work, of engineering calculations, of prototyping and testing and refinement. Each represents the contributions of hundreds or thousands of people, from the famous names like Kelly Johnson to the anonymous technicians and workers whose names appear only in classified records, if anywhere. Each represents a solution to problems that seemed unsolvable, a pushing past limits that seemed fixed, a refusal to accept that something couldn't be done. The desert has absorbed all of this human activity, all of this striving and achievement, without changing in its essential nature. It was here before the first humans arrived in North America. It will be here long after our civilization has faded into history. The mountains don't care about our aircraft or our secrets. The lake bed doesn't judge our efforts. The stars shine with light that left them years or centuries or millennia ago, long before Area 51 existed, and that light will continue streaming through space long after the facility is abandoned and forgotten. There's something comforting in that perspective, in the awareness of how small our individual concerns are against the vastness of geological and astronomical time. The problems that seem overwhelming today will eventually be resolved or will become irrelevant. The secrets that seem so important to keep will eventually be revealed or will cease to matter. The technologies that seem so advanced will be superseded by better technologies, then those will be superseded in turn in an endless progression of human innovation and improvement. But in the moment, in the present, this work at Area 51 matters to the people doing it. The pilots trust their lives to the aircraft they fly. The engineers stake their reputations on their designs. The nation depends on the capabilities these programs provide. It's serious work, important work, work that requires dedication and skill and often courage. That it happens in secret doesn't diminish its significance. If anything, the secrecy adds weight, adds pressure, makes the successes more satisfying because they can't be publicly celebrated. Imagine standing on the lake bed now, in the middle of the night, alone under that enormous sky. The nearest human might be miles away. The silence is so complete that you can hear your own heartbeat, your own breathing. The air smells clean and dry, with that distinctive desert scent that's hard to describe, but unmistakable once you've experienced it. The ground beneath your feet is firm and slightly dusty. The ancient lake bottom that's been dry for thousands of years. You might feel small in this vast space, dwarfed by the scale of the landscape and the sky. Or you might feel connected to something larger, aware that you're standing on the same ground where history has been made, where human beings have pushed themselves and their machines to do things that previous generations would have considered impossible. Both feelings would be valid. Both would be true in their own way. The temperature continues to drop as the night progresses. In the summer, this might mean cooling from 100 degrees in the afternoon to 70 degrees by midnight. In the winter, it might mean dropping below freezing, with frost forming on any exposed surface by morning. The desert doesn't moderate its extremes. It doesn't compromise with human comfort. You adapt to it or you suffer, but it remains unchanged by your presence. This harshness is part of why Area 51 is located here. The isolation and the difficulty of the environment contribute to security. Few people want to spend time in a place this remote and extreme unless they have a compelling reason. The nearest town offers minimal amenities. There's no entertainment, no diversions, nothing but the work and the desert. For short periods, people can handle it. For longer periods, it takes a certain mindset, a certain ability to find satisfaction in the work itself, rather than external rewards. The workers who have spent careers associated with Area 51, who have made this commute thousands of times, who have watched the desert cycle through its seasons year after year, develop a relationship with this landscape. They might not love it in any conventional sense, but they understand it, respect it, appreciate its harsh beauty in their own way. They know which mountains catch the first light at dawn. They know how the sky looks just before a rare rainstorm. They know the particular quality of the silence on a calm winter night. And some of them, perhaps, feel a sense of ownership or stewardship toward this place, even though they don't own it, and never will. They've contributed to its history. They've been part of something important that happened here. Their presence has left no physical mark on the desert, but in the secret records and classified documents. They exist as part of the story. Their names are listed in files as people who were there when specific aircraft flew specific missions, who solved specific problems, who contributed in specific ways to programs that mattered. That has to be enough for them, because it's all they get. There are no public awards, no newspaper articles, no recognition from anyone outside the small community of people who know what really happened. The satisfaction has to be internal, has to come from knowing they did their job well, contributed to something larger than themselves, and kept the secrets they were entrusted with keeping. Let your breathing slow now, deep and regular, as you stand in your imagination under that vast Nevada sky. The stars turn slowly overhead in their ancient wheel, the same stars that have guided travelers and marked time for as long as humans have looked upward. Orion marches across the winter sky. The summer triangle dominates in warmer months. The Milky Way stretches overhead like a river of light, so dense with stars that the individual points blend together into a glowing band. You might see a satellite track slowly across this sky, a point of light moving steadily against the fixed stars, a human-made object in orbit, one of thousands that now circle the Earth. Or you might see a meteor, a streak of light as a bit of cosmic debris burns up in the atmosphere, a reminder that we live in a dynamic universe where things are constantly in motion, constantly changing. The stars themselves seem fixed, but they too are moving through space at enormous speeds, their apparent stability an illusion created by the vastness of interstellar distances. The desert night invites contemplation, invites letting your mind wander to large questions and long perspectives. Who are we as a species? What are we trying to accomplish? Why do we build these machines, test these technologies, keep these secrets? The answers are complex and multifaceted, involving geopolitics and security and human curiosity and the desire to push boundaries and achieve things that haven't been achieved before. There's no single explanation that captures all of it. No simple story that makes sense of everything that's happened at Area 51 over the decades. But perhaps that's appropriate. The world is complex. Human motivations are varied and sometimes contradictory. We want security, but also transparency. We want to know secrets, but also understand why some things need to remain secret. We're curious about the unknown, but also comfortable with some mysteries remaining unsolved. These tensions don't resolve neatly. They exist in productive friction, pushing us to constantly reconsider where lines should be drawn and how to balance competing values. Area 51 embodies these tensions. It's a real place doing real work that matters for real reasons, but it's also shrouded in secrecy that invites speculation and imagination. It's both more ordinary and more extraordinary than most people realize. The truth about what happens there is simultaneously more mundane and more impressive than the wildest conspiracy theories suggest. Human ingenuity and dedication are remarkable enough without invoking aliens or secret technologies beyond current physics. As you continue to stand under this imagined sky, feel your body relaxing more completely. Your shoulders drop, your jaw unclenches, your breathing deepens further. The tension you might carry in your muscles begins to release, flowing out of you like water draining from a vessel. You're not holding on to anything now, not gripping or controlling or trying to maintain any particular state. You're simply present in this vast, quiet space, aware of the stars and the desert and the profound silence that surrounds you. The night will last for hours yet. The stars will continue their slow rotation. The temperature will drop further, reaching its minimum just before dawn. And eventually, the eastern sky will begin to lighten, first with a barely perceptible glow, then with colors, oranges, and pinks and golds, as the sun prepares to rise once more over the mountains. The night will give way to day, and the cycle will continue as it has for billions of years, and will continue for billions more. But for now, in this moment, there's only the deep darkness, the brilliant stars, the cool air, and the silence. There's nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to go, no problem you need to solve. You can simply exist here, in this space, letting time pass without marking it, letting thoughts drift without following them, letting yourself sink deeper into stillness and quiet. The desert holds you gently in its vast emptiness. The stars watch without judgment. The mountains stand their eternal watch, and you breathe slowly and steadily, feeling more relaxed with each exhale, more at peace with each moment that passes, more ready to let go completely and drift into deep, restful sleep, closing into the night. And so we come to the end of our journey through the Nevada desert, through the history and legends of Area 51, through stories of aircraft and engineers and the people who keep secrets. You've traveled with me across this landscape, through time and speculation, through verified fact and persistent myth. We've walked together under that vast sky, stood on that ancient lake bed, imagined the sounds and sights of aircraft that push the boundaries of the possible. The real Area 51 continues its work, whatever that work might be in this current moment. New programs are underway, new technologies being tested, new problems being solved by dedicated people who will not talk about what they do for years or decades, if ever. The Janet flights will take off from Las Vegas tomorrow morning as they do every weekday, carrying workers to their classified jobs in the desert. The security perimeter will be maintained and monitored. The hangars will shelter their contents from casual observation. The desert will absorb it all, as it has absorbed everything else, without changing in its essential nature. For you, though, the journey is complete. You've learned what there is to learn, at least what can be known from outside the classified world. You've heard about the U-2 and the SR-71, about stealth technology and Bob Lazar, about the 2013 declassification and the ongoing secrecy. You've imagined standing under that desert sky, feeling the silence and the vastness and the particular quality of that remote, harsh, beautiful place. Now it's time to let all of that go. Let the information drift away like dust on desert wind. Let the images fade like stars disappearing at dawn. Let your conscious mind release its grip on details and facts and stories. You don't need to hold on to any of it. The knowledge will be there if you want to return to it later. But for now, you can simply let it all go. Feel yourself sinking deeper into your bed, your body heavy and relaxed, supported completely by whatever surface you're resting on. Feel your breathing slow and steady, requiring no effort or attention. Feel the darkness behind your eyelids, comfortable and welcoming, a darkness that invites you to stop thinking, stop processing, stop being aware of anything except the gentle drift toward sleep. The desert night continues in your imagination, but you're no longer standing under that sky. You're floating now, or perhaps dissolving, becoming part of that vast darkness, that profound silence, that endless expanse. There's no boundary between you and the night, no separation between your awareness and the peaceful emptiness that surrounds you. You're not thinking about this, not analyzing it, just experiencing it as you drift deeper and deeper into stillness. Sleep is very close now, perhaps already beginning to take hold. Your thoughts, if you have any, are fragmented and fleeting, barely forming before they dissipate. Images might flicker through your mind, disconnected and dreamlike, making no particular sense and requiring no interpretation. You're at the threshold between waking and sleeping, in that liminal space where consciousness softens and blurs and gradually fades. The last thing you might be aware of, the final anchor before you drift completely away, is gratitude. Gratitude for this moment of peace and quiet. Gratitude for the ability to let go and rest. Gratitude for the remarkable world we live in, with its deserts and mountains and stars, with its human stories of achievement and secrecy, and endless striving towards something better. But even that gratitude is gentle, not demanding, not keeping you awake, just a soft feeling that accompanies you as you transition into sleep. Before I let you go completely, I want to thank you for watching this video on Veilbreaker. If you've enjoyed this journey into the mysteries and realities of Area 51, if this has helped you relax and drift towards sleep, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps other people find these videos, helps the algorithm understand that this content is valuable, and helps me continue creating these long-form explorations of fascinating topics. There's no pressure, though. If you're already asleep, then my work here is done, and that's the best possible outcome. For those still awake, I'll be creating more content like this, more deep dives into unsolved mysteries and fascinating subjects, all presented in this calm, measured way that's designed to help you relax and perhaps drift off to sleep if that's what you need. The world is full of remarkable stories, strange occurrences, unexplained phenomena, and historical events that capture the imagination. We'll continue exploring them together, one video at a time, one quiet evening at a time. Sleep well, traveler. Let the desert night embrace you. Let the vast sky shelter you. Let the profound silence of that remote Nevada landscape become your own inner silence as you drift away from consciousness and into deep, restful, renewing sleep. The stars will still be there in the morning. The desert will endure. The mysteries will wait. But for now, there's nothing to do but rest. Good night.